Those disgusting scars make people sick, Dad. You look like a monster, and I can't let you ruin my perfect wedding photos. Those words came from my own daughter, the little girl I raised alone, the child I sacrificed everything for, the woman I was supposed to walk down the aisle in just 3 weeks. They say blood is thicker than water. But what happens when your own blood calls you a monster? What happens when the child you built your entire life around decides you're not worthy of being part of theirs? My name is Bennett Cross, and I'm about to tell you a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about family loyalty. For 29 years, I believed that unconditional love meant accepting whatever treatment I received in return. I was wrong. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. Now let me tell you about the phone call that changed everything. I was touching my scars again when Madison called that Tuesday evening, running my fingers along the raised tissue that covers the left side of my face and neck. 20 years, and I still catch myself doing this, tracing the permanent reminder of the day I became a hero. March 15th, 2004. I was supervising a construction site when an electrical panel exploded. The office trailer went up in flames and everyone got out except Tommy Rodriguez, 22, fresh out of college, somebody's son. I ran back in and found him unconscious under a fallen beam. Got him out, but not before the ceiling came down on me. Second-degree burns, the doctors said. Could have been worse. Madison was 9 then. She'd tell everyone her daddy was a hero, brought that newspaper clipping to show and tell. My dad saved someone's life, she'd say with such pride. I kept that clipping in my wallet for 15 years. The phone rang while I was still looking at those scars in the bathroom mirror. Dad. Madison's voice had that edge she'd developed since dating Trevor. Hey, sweetheart. Wedding planning going okay? Long pause. That's why I'm calling. We need to talk about the wedding. I settled into my recliner, the same one where I'd helped her with homework for years. What's on your mind? It's about you coming. I've got my suit ready. Nothing flashy. Your mom would be so proud. Dad, stop. That's the problem. Trevor's family is paying for everything, and they have very specific expectations about how things should look. Something cold settled in my chest. What are you saying? Those scars are very noticeable. And your clothes, that old car, everything about you screams working class. Trevor's mother is particular about appearances. The photographer, the videographer, it all has to be Instagram perfect. Madison, I'm your father. I know, and I'm grateful for everything you've done. But you don't fit the aesthetic we're going for. Those scars make you look damaged, monster-like. Monster-like. The little girl who used to trace these scars with tiny fingers just called me a monster. These scars came from saving a man's life. That was 20 years ago, Dad. Nobody cares about that story anymore. What matters is how you'll look in the photos. Honestly, you'll ruin them. Trevor's family has standards. Standards. I thought about the double shifts I'd worked for her college tuition, the second-hand clothes I'd worn so she could have name brands, the social life I'd sacrificed to focus on raising her. So what exactly are you suggesting? Trevor and I found some nice assisted living facilities, places with people your age, activities, medical care. You're 67 and isolated since retirement. This would be good for you. You want to put me in a nursing home so I won't embarrass your new family? Don't be dramatic. We just think it's time for a clean slate. You start the next chapter, we start ours. Clean slate. Like 29 years of being her father was something to erase. Madison, I raised you alone. Worked myself half to death giving you everything. And I'm grateful, but gratitude doesn't change the fact that you don't belong in my new life. Trevor's family moves in different circles. They have expectations. I looked at the photos covering my walls. Every birthday, every graduation, I was there beaming with pride. In most, I'd positioned my good side toward the camera, trying to minimize the scars so she wouldn't be embarrassed. So this is it? You're throwing me away because I don't photograph well? You're being dramatic. We'll visit you at the facility. Maybe talk on the phone sometimes. Sometimes. Like I was some distant relative. The scars you're ashamed of, I got them being a hero. The cheap clothes you're embarrassed by, I wore them so you could have better. The old car that bothers you, I drove it so I could afford your college. Dad, I understand, but no, Madison, you don't understand anything. I hung up. That night, I sat with a glass of whiskey I'd been saving for her wedding toast, staring at photos on my refrigerator. Madison at 9, grinning and holding that hero newspaper clipping. Madison at 16, still hugging me despite teenage embarrassment. Madison at graduation, my arm around her shoulders. When had I become the monster in her story instead of the hero? The daughter I'd sacrificed everything for just told me I was too ugly for her happiness. The child I'd raised to have everything now thought I was nothing. But Madison had no idea who she was really talking to. She saw a scarred old man in cheap clothes driving an old car. What she didn't see was the portfolio I'd been quietly building for 25 years, the properties I owned, the investments I'd made while living like I had nothing. My modest little house held more financial documents than she could imagine, and every single dollar had been meant for her future. Had been. I didn't sleep, couldn't stop hearing Madison's voice, monster-like. You don't belong in my new life. By morning I was staring at photos scattered across my kitchen table. 29 years of memories, and suddenly I was seeing them differently. Madison's sweet 16, I'd paid for everything but somehow ended up serving drinks in the kitchen. Her college graduation, she'd introduced me as my dad with no stories, no context, like I was just some guy who happened to share her DNA. The pattern was there, I'd just been blind to it. My phone buzzed. Madison, Dad, the assisted living facility has an opening next month. We can tour it this weekend. Next month, she'd already made arrangements. The doorbell rang around noon. Buddy Rodriguez stood there. My friend for 35 years, the man whose nephew I'd saved in that fire. You look like hell, he said, pushing past me. Madison called you. She's worried about your mental health. Said you hung up on her and might do something dramatic. Buddy surveyed the photo chaos in my living room. So I'm here to check on your mental health. My mental health is fine. My daughter's the problem. Is she? I stared at him. She called me a monster, Buddy. Said I was too ugly for her wedding. And that surprised you. What's that supposed to mean? Buddy settled into his chair, giving me that cop stare that got confessions from criminals. Bennett, when's the last time Madison called just to see how you were doing? She calls when she needs money, when she needs favors. When's the last time she called because she missed her old man? I opened my mouth. When... Silence. You want? I was trying to be a good dad. You were trying to buy... The words hit harder than Madison. She used to love me, I said quietly. She used to need you. There's a difference. Buddy's voice softened. You're not the monster here, Bennett. You're the victim, but you're also the one who created the monster. I looked at the photos again, years. So what am I supposed to do? That depends. Are you going? What do you mean? Buddy smiled. Not his friendly smile, but the one he wore when arresting someone who thought they were smarter than he was. Madison thinks. He was right. Madison saw the humble facade, the modest lifestyle, the man who lived small so she could live large. I'd hidden my wealth from her deliberately. Wanted her to develop character, first learn the value of work before she learned about money. I thought if she knew I was rich, she'd become entitled and lazy. Turns out she became entitled anyway. She had no idea what was hidden in my filing cabinet upstairs. Maybe it's time she learned. After he left, I sat alone with those photos. Madison at 9, proudly showing off her hero daddy. Madison at 29, calling that same hero a monster. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being her father and become her ATM. I'd enabled her entitlement, funded her cruelty, and taught her that love was transactional. But Madison had made one crucial mistake. She thought she knew everything about her pathetic, embarrassing father. She was about to learn how wrong she was. After Buddy left, I climbed the stairs to my home office, a spare bedroom lined with filing cabinets that Madison had never bothered to ask about. She'd assumed they contained old engineering documents, maybe some tax records. She'd never imagined they held the financial foundation of a small empire. I pulled out my leather portfolio and opened it for the first time in months. Time to remind myself exactly who Bennett Cross really was. Property deeds spread across my desk. The duplex I'd bought in 1999 with my wife's life insurance money, the commercial building I'd purchased in 2006, when everyone said the neighborhood was dying, the apartment complex I'd picked up during the 2012 foreclosure crisis when nobody else wanted it. 4 properties. Total, all appreciating, steadily over the years, all generating monthly rental income. Then came the investment statements. 40 years of systematic saving. My 401k IRA's index funds company stock from when my engineering firm went public, conservative bonds and CDs. Decades of living below my means while my portfolio grew. I added up the numbers: real estate investments, savings, life, insurance policies. Total net worth, throwing account of $1,000, $3.8 million. I sat back in my chair, staring at the figure that represented 25 years of driving that old Honda while my wealth accumulated. 25 years of shopping at Walmart while my assets appreciated. 25 years of letting Madison think her father was just getting by while I built generational wealth. The scarred, embarrassing man she wanted to hide from her wedding was worth more than Trevor's entire family. I reached for my phone and dialed Jonathan Blackwood, the estate attorney who'd helped me draft my will 5 years ago. Bennett, good to hear from you. What can I do for you? I need to change my will, Jonathan, completely. I see. Can you come in tomorrow? We should discuss this in person. I'll be there at 10. The next morning, I sat across from Jonathan in his mahogany-paneled office, the same office where I'd originally left everything to my beloved daughter, Madison. You want to exclude Madison entirely? Jonathan asked, reviewing my current will. Completely. I want to leave my entire estate to the Women's Educational Foundation when I die. But while I'm alive, I'm going to use this money to build a new life. A life where my daughter has no place. Jonathan set down his pen. Bennett, this is a substantial estate. Are you certain about this decision? I told him about the phone call, about being called a monster, about the nursing home ultimatum, about 29 years of sacrifice met with ultimate betrayal. I spent decades building this wealth for her future, I said. She just told me I don't have a place in that future, so she won't have a place in my wealth. And more importantly, I'm going to start actually living like the wealthy man I am instead of hiding it for someone who doesn't appreciate the sacrifice. Jonathan nodded slowly. I understand your anger, but estate decisions made in emotional states. This isn't emotion, Jonathan. This is clarity. For the first time in years, I'm seeing my daughter for who she really is, not who I hoped she'd become. And I'm finally going to live like the successful man I actually am, instead of pretending to be poor for her benefit. Very well, I'll draft new documents. Given the size of the estate, I recommend we include a video statement explaining your reasoning in case there's any attempt to contest. Perfect. I want it ironclad. What about notification? Do you want Madison to know about the change? I smiled. The same smile Buddy had given me yesterday. She'll find out soon enough. Her wedding is in 2 weeks. You're planning to attend? Oh, yes. I wouldn't miss it for the world. And Jonathan, I think it's time I started dressing like a man worth $3.8 million instead of hiding behind cheap clothes and false modesty. Jonathan raised an eyebrow but didn't ask further questions. Professional discretion was why I'd chosen him. We spent 2 hours going through every detail. By noon, my new will was drafted, executed, and legally binding. Madison Cross was no longer my heir. Instead, my fortune would fund scholarships and job training for women rebuilding their lives after I was gone. But until then, I was finally going to enjoy the wealth I'd spent decades accumulating. Walking out of that office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years' power. Not just the power that comes from money, but the power that comes from finally taking control of your own life and living authentically. Madison thought she knew her father. She thought I was a pathetic old man who'd accept whatever scraps of affection she threw my way. She thought the worst thing she could do was exclude me from her perfect wedding. She had no idea that the man she'd just discarded was about to step out of the shadows and show the world exactly who Bennett Cross really was. 2 weeks until the wedding. 2 weeks to plan my transformation and my final gift to the daughter who called me a monster. It was going to be perfect. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of the mirror at Denver's most expensive men's salon, barely recognizing the man looking back at me. What do you think, Mr. Cross? Marcus the stylist stepped back to admire his work. For the first time in 20 years, I looked like someone worth $3.8 million. The haircut alone had cost more than I usually spent on clothes in 6 months, but the result was transformative. My silver hair was expertly styled, my beard professionally trimmed, to complement rather than hide my scars. The burn tissue was still there, would always be there, but somehow it looked distinguished now, like a badge of honor, rather than something to hide. It's perfect, I said and meant it. Next, stop, the tailor. I'd ordered a custom suit, charcoal gray, perfectly fitted $200 of Italian wool that draped like it had been designed specifically for my body, which technically it had been. The man in the three-way mirror looked nothing like the shabby father Madison was ashamed of. This man looked successful, confident, dignified. This man looked like someone you'd want at your wedding, not someone you'd hide in the back row. I drove to the church in a rental, a black BMW that purred like a contented cat. No more hiding behind that old Honda. Today, Bennett Cross was stepping into the light. The church parking lot was full of luxury cars, Mercedes Audis, a few Teslas, Trevor's family's wealth on full display. I parked between a Porsche and a Lexus where I belonged. Walking up the church steps, I felt eyes on me. A few guests turned to look, probably wondering who the distinguished gentleman was. One of Trevor's relatives, perhaps a successful business partner. None of them recognized Madison's embarrassing father. I chose a seat halfway up the aisle, not the back row Madison had probably imagined I'd slink into, but not the family section either. somewhere visible where she couldn't miss me. The processional began, and I watched Trevor take his place at the altar, looking nervous and overdressed in his flashy tuxedo. Then came the bridesmaids, followed by Madison herself. She was beautiful. I had to give her that. The dress was everything she'd dreamed of. The flowers perfect, her smile radiant as she floated down the aisle like a princess in a fairy tale. Her eyes swept the congregation, accepting admiration and well wishes from her guests. When her gaze reached my row, it passed right over me, then snapped back with a double take that almost made her stumble. The shock on her face was worth every penny I'd spent on the transformation. I smiled and gave her a small wave. Her mouth fell open slightly before she caught herself and continued down the aisle. But I could see her mind racing. Who was that man? Why did he look familiar? And why was he sitting where her father should have been if he'd had the nerve to show up? The ceremony proceeded without incident. I listened to the vows, watched Madison and Trevor exchange rings, and applauded politely when they were pronounced husband and wife. Just another wedding guest celebrating the happy couple. During the recessional, Madison's eyes found me again. This time recognition dawned. The confusion turned to shock, then to something that might have been embarrassment. Her perfect wedding photos would now include images of her looking stunned and off balance. Good. The reception line formed in the church vestibule. I waited until most of the guests had offered their congratulations before approaching. Madison stood beside Trevor, accepting compliments on her dress, her flowers, her perfect day. When she saw me approaching, her smile became fixed, artificial. "Congratulations, Madison," I said, extending my hand to Trevor first. "You must be the groom. I'm Bennett Cross." Trevor shook my hand with the firm grip of someone trying to establish dominance. "Mr. Cross, I don't think we've met." "No, we haven't. I'm Madison's father." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Trevor's eyes widened slightly as he took in my expensive suit, my professional styling, my confident bearing. This wasn't the shabby embarrassment Madison had described. "Dad," Madison's voice was small, uncertain. You look different." I smiled. "Yes, I imagine I do. It's amazing what a good tailor can accomplish." I reached into my jacket and pulled out an envelope. Heavy cream paper, her name written in elegant calligraphy across the front. "This is for you," I said, pressing it into her hands. "My wedding gift." Madison took the envelope with trembling fingers. "Dad, Congratulations on your perfect day, sweetheart. I hope it's everything you dreamed it would be." I turned to Trevor. "Take care of her. She's all I had in this world." Had. Past tense. Let him puzzle over that. I kissed Madison's cheek, the same cheek she'd probably spent an hour perfecting with makeup, and walked away. Behind me, I heard her call my name, but I didn't turn back. In the parking lot, I climbed into the BMW and started the engine. Through the church windows, I could see the reception in full swing. Madison was still standing by the door, clutching my envelope, watching me through the glass. I gave her one last wave and drove away. By the time she opened that envelope and read what was inside, I'd be halfway to the airport. By the time she fully understood what she'd lost, I'd be starting my new life in a place where no one knew. The story of Bennett Cross and his ungrateful daughter. The transformation was complete. The old Bennett, the one who lived small and loved foolishly, was gone forever. Madison stood in the church vestibule, clutching the envelope while her reception continued around her. Guests laughed, champagne flowed, but all she could think about was the distinguished man who just walked away. The man who looked nothing like her shabby father, but somehow was him. "Who was that?" Trevor appeared beside her. "He seemed different than you described." "That was my father," Madison said hollowly. "Victoria Ashford." Trevor's mother glided over. "Darling, who was that distinguished gentleman? He looked quite successful." "Madison's father," Trevor said, still processing. Victoria's eyebrows rose. "But I thought you said he wasn't suitable for photos." Madison stepped into a quiet corner and opened the envelope with shaking fingers. "My dear Madison, by the time you read this, I will be gone from your life forever. Not dead, simply free. 20 years ago, I got these scars saving a man's life. You used to call me your hero. Today you called those same scars disgusting and said I looked like a monster. For 29 years, I built a $3.8 million fortune, all for your future. I lived modestly so you could have everything you wanted." Madison's breath caught. $3.8 million. "I never told you about the money because I wanted you to develop character first. Instead, I created an entitled stranger who sees her father as an embarrassment. You said I don't fit your aesthetic? You're right. I don't fit into a world where appearance matters more than character. So I'm giving you what you wanted. A life without your embarrassing father. My will has been changed. Every dollar of my fortune now goes to charity when I die, to help daughters who actually love their fathers." The paper crumpled in Madison's grip. Nearly $4 million. Her shabby father was worth more than Trevor's entire family. You wanted me gone. Congratulations. You'll never see me again. Your father's love was unconditional. Your daughter's love was transactional. I finally learned the difference. Goodbye forever, Bennett Cross. P.S. The monster you're ashamed of is worth more than Trevor's entire family, but you'll never see a penny of it. The letter slipped from Madison's fingers. Around her, the reception noise faded as the weight of what she'd done crashed over her. Her father wasn't poor. He was wealthy. Wealthier than anyone at this wedding, and she'd thrown him away like garbage. Madison, Trevor's voice seemed distant. What's wrong? She couldn't speak. $3.8 million. Gone. Forever. Victoria bent to retrieve the fallen letter, scanning the contents. Madison watched her expression change from curiosity to horror. Oh my God, Victoria whispered. Trevor, look at this. Within minutes, the letter was being passed among Trevor's family. Madison stood frozen as her perfect wedding disintegrated into whispered conversations and horrified stares. You drove away a multimillionaire. Trevor's voice was barely controlled. Your father is worth almost $4 million, and you told me he was some broke loser. I didn't know, Madison whispered. How could you not know? Victoria's voice was shrill. How could you not know your own father was wealthy? He lived so modestly because he was saving money for you. Trevor exploded. And now it's all going to charity because you called him a monster. The photographer approached. Could we get some family photos now? Family photos. Madison almost laughed hysterically. What family she'd just destroyed, the only real family she had. Where is he? She asked suddenly, pushing toward the church doors. Where did he go? The parking lot was empty. The black BMW was gone. Her wealthy, successful, heartbroken father was gone. Madison pulled out her phone and dialed his number. Disconnected. She tried texting. Messages bounced back as undeliverable. Standing in her wedding dress in an empty parking lot, Madison realized she had just made the most expensive mistake of her life. $3.8 million. Gone forever. And more importantly, her father was gone too. The distinguished gentleman who'd looked so confident, so successful, so dignified. That was who her father really was. And she'd been too blind, too shallow, too cruel to see it. Now she'd never see him again. 3 months later, I was sitting on my new patio in Scottsdale, Arizona, watching the sunrise paint the desert mountains gold. My coffee steamed in the crisp morning air, and for the first time in 29 years, my phone wasn't ringing with demands from Madison. Because Madison didn't have my new number. The house I'd bought was nothing like my modest Denver home. This was a 3,000-square-foot ranch with a pool, mountain views, and enough space for a man worth $3.8 million to finally live like it. I'd paid cash, no mortgage, no ties to my old life. My neighbors were retired professionals like myself, people who appreciated quiet mornings and respectful boundaries, people who knew nothing about Bennett Cross and his ungrateful daughter. I'd become Ben here, just Ben, a friendly retiree who'd done well in real estate and decided to enjoy his golden years in the desert sun. My phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor Jim, golf at 9. I smiled and texted back, see you at the clubhouse. This was what peace felt like. Madison had tried to reach me, of course, but he kept me informed. He was the only person from my old life who had my new contact information. She calls me every day, he'd told me during one of our weekly check-ins, begging me to tell her where you are. Says she wants to apologize, make things right. And what do you tell her? That you're exactly where you want to be, and she's exactly where she chose to be. The fallout from the wedding had been spectacular. Trevor's family was horrified to learn Madison had driven away a millionaire father. The story spread through their social circle like wildfire. The bride who called her wealthy father a monster and lost a $4 million inheritance. Victoria Ashford's been telling everyone Madison married beneath Trevor's station. Buddy reported with satisfaction. Says she clearly comes from a family with no class. The irony was delicious. Madison had worried about me embarrassing her. Now she was the embarrassment. What about Trevor? He's having second thoughts. Been doing math on what their future would have looked like with your money. $4 million buys a lot of forgiveness for facial scars. But it was too late for math, too late for forgiveness. Madison had tried other ways to reach me. Letters to my old address, return to sender, social media searches. Bennett Cross had deleted all accounts. She'd even hired a private investigator, but you can't find someone who's legally changed his life with the thoroughness of an engineer and the resources of a millionaire. I was a ghost to her now. The morning golf game was perfect. 4 retired men who'd worked hard, saved wisely, and now had the luxury of Tuesday mornings on pristine courses. We talked about investments, travel plans, normal conversation. Healthy relationships with no manipulation or demands. You seem like a man who's figured out retirement, said Frank, the former surgeon. I finally learned the difference between being needed and being valued, I replied. After golf, I drove to my peaceful house thinking about Madison, not with longing or regret, but with detached curiosity. She was probably at work pretending her life was normal while carrying the weight of what she'd lost. Still checking her phone, hoping for forgiveness. Still explaining why she'd driven away a millionaire. But I felt no satisfaction in her suffering, no joy in her regret. I felt nothing at all, which was exactly how I wanted it. That evening, sitting by my pool watching the sunset, my phone rang. Arizona number, one of my new friends. I answered with a smile, because that's what you do when people call out of genuine friendship rather than desperate need. This was my life now, clean, simple, honest. No drama, no manipulation, no ungrateful children who saw their father as an ATM. Madison had wanted me out of her life, mission accomplished, and I'd never been happier. The desert sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, and I raised my glass of wine in a silent toast to second chances, to self-respect, to the courage to walk away from people who don't deserve you, even when they share your DNA, especially when they share your DNA. Tomorrow I'd play golf again, have lunch with friends who chose my company rather than my wallet, and continue building a life based on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. Madison could keep trying to find me. I'd keep choosing peace over toxicity every single day. 6 months after the wedding, I stood on a hiking trail in the Sonoran Desert, watching sunrise illuminate ancient saguaro cacti. The silence was profound. No demands, no guilt trips. Just peace, and the knowledge that I was exactly where I belonged. My hiking companion Sarah, a retired teacher, pointed to a roadrunner darting between cacti. 68 years old, and I'm still seeing things for the first time. I understood exactly. At 67, I was finally living my first authentic life. The group I hiked with had become genuine friends. Sarah, Jim, Frank, Maria. None of them knew about Madison. They knew Ben, the guy who made them laugh, remembered their stories, brought cookies to book club. They knew the man I'd always been underneath 29 years of walking on eggshells. After the hike, I found a message from Buddy. Our weekly check-ins had become quarterly, as my old life faded into irrelevance. Madison called again yesterday, still asking about you. Trevor filed for divorce last month. His family never got over the wedding disaster. You sound happy, and that's all that matters. I deleted the message without a second thought. Madison's marriage had lasted 8 months. I felt neither satisfaction nor sympathy. Her choices, her consequences. I'd spent too many years trying to fix her problems. That man was gone, and I didn't miss him. That afternoon, I sat by my pool reading, surrounded by simple interactions with people who saw me as a person, not a resource. The mailman waved. Neighbor kids called, "Hi, Mr. Bennett." No hidden agendas, no manipulation. My phone rang, Arizona number, so I answered. "Bennett's Maria. Barbecue Saturday. Can you bring that potato salad?" "Wouldn't miss it," I said, looking forward to good food and better company. This was what healthy relationships looked like. Mutual respect, genuine affection. People who called because they enjoyed my company, not because they needed something. As evening approached, I thought about the man I used to be, the one who worked double shifts to fund Madison's entitlement, who covered his scars and apologized for existing, who believed love meant accepting abuse. That man had been slowly dying for years. The phone call that destroyed everything had actually saved him. I pulled out my journal and wrote, 6 months of living authentically, choosing peace over chaos, respect over manipulation, self-worth over self-sacrifice. In losing Madison, I found myself. The desert sunset painted the sky brilliant colors. I poured good wine, because I could afford it and deserved it, and settled onto my patio. Somewhere in Denver, Madison was dealing with divorce, maybe still hoping for forgiveness. Maybe she'd learned something. Maybe not. Either way, it was no longer my problem. I'd spent 29 years believing good fathers accept whatever treatment they receive. I'd confused love with enabling sacrifice, with stupidity. I'd taught Madison she could treat me like garbage, and I'd keep coming back. The lesson had finally ended. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah about next week's hiking adventure. I smiled and replied, surrounded by people who chose me, not used me. The stars appeared in the clear desert sky. I raised my glass in a silent toast, to second chances, to self-respect, to walking away from toxicity. To everyone listening, you're not obligated to accept abuse from anyone, family included. You're not required to fund other people's cruelty with your love or peace of mind. Sometimes the most loving thing is refusing to enable destructive behavior. Sometimes the family you choose treats you better than the family you're born with. Madison got what she asked for, a life without her embarrassing father. I got something better, a life without an ungrateful daughter. We're both living with our choices. The difference is I'm finally happy with mine. Sometimes God puts us through trials to show us our true worth, and Bennett's story proves that divine timing reveals everything. The lesson here is profound love should never be a one-way street, and self-respect isn't selfish, it's sacred. This betrayal story reminds us that God doesn't want us to accept abuse, even from family. Bennett learned what many grandpa stories teach us sometimes. Walking away is the most loving thing you can do. When Madison called her hero, father, a monster, she forgot that God sees the heart, not the scars. The beautiful truth in betrayal stories like this is that endings can become beginnings. Bennett's journey from doormat to dignified man shows us that it's never too late to choose yourself. Many grandpa stories end in regret, but Bennett chose redemption. God has a way of turning our deepest pain into our greatest freedom. Madison lost $3.8 million and a father's love, but Bennett gained something priceless: peace. These grandpa stories remind us that respect must be earned and boundaries must be maintained. The final lesson: your value isn't determined by how others treat you, but by how you treat yourself. God gives us the strength to walk away from toxicity, even when it breaks our hearts. What's your take on Bennett's choice? Have you ever had to walk away from toxic family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button if this story touched your heart. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss our powerful life stories. Your story matters too. We'd love to hear it.